that.
All right. Good evening, everyone. This is a meeting of the Body Worn Camera Ad Hoc. I am Commissioner Brenda Harbin Forte. I'm chairing the ad hoc. I'm going to ask us to just go around and introduce ourselves to each other, and then we'll get the meeting going. So, Commissioner Shea, why don't we start with you?
Hello, my name is Jesse Shea. I'm a commissioner on the Oakland Commission.
All right. Turner, Lieutenant Turner.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Joe Turner here, with Lieutenant with the Policy and Publication Unit with the Police Department. So some of you have seen many times before, some it's the first time, so welcome. So we work a lot with the Police Commission in drafting these policies, and so I'm looking forward to working with you all.
Okay, and Reggie Lyles, Sergeant Lyles, Lieutenant Lyles, how do you want to go ahead? Retired?
Yeah, I'm retired, so I'm just Reginald Lyles.
All right.
I retired as a deputy chief, so
okay, deputy chief, and
I'm a longtime Oakland resident, and I consider it my hometown. I'm a deacon and former chair of the deacon board at Allen Temple Baptist Church.
Very good. And you were with OPD for a while there too, right?
No, never. I worked.
Okay.
It's a long story, but I worked at the Berkeley Police Department for 20 years, and then 10 years in the West Bay here in the city of Novato.
Okay. I don't know why I wanted to put you at OPD in your early years. Okay. All right. Let's move on then to Katie Dixon. I'm just looking at my screen. Okay, Katie Dixon.
Yes, thank y'all so much. Good evening. My name is Katie Dixon. I go by KD. That's just short. Got a little more swag to it. Let me see. I am joining as a community member. I am a member of All of Us or None. That's my volunteering home. They focus on formerly incarcerated and currently incarcerated people regaining their rights for themselves and communities, and also elevating formerly and currently incarcerated folks to leadership roles. And in my daytime job, I work for the ACLU. I'm an organizer over there out of the Northern California branch. And yeah, working on similar issues, criminal justice, defund work, a little campaign finance. And yeah, so hey, thanks for the person that invited me. And yeah, I appreciate it.
All right, very good. Thank you. All right, Officer Cervantes.
Hello, everybody. I'm Officer Felicia Cervantes. I'm currently with the Policy and Publications Unit, and I'm looking forward to these meetings.
All right, thank you. And I go to Kay Chang. Who's that one? Kay Chang? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Karen Chang. I'm with City of Oakland CPRA Community Review Agency, and we are civilian oversight agency that I'm doing intake job, but we have investigator, investigating police misconduct.
Okay, and first name is Carrie. What is the first name?
Karen.
Karen. All right, very good. Why don't we go then to, things are switching around. Deputy Director Settle.
Good evening, everyone. Deputy Director Kiana Settle with the Oakland Police Department. Happy to be here tonight and provide any input I can on the topic of body-worn cameras.
All right, thank you. And Frida Caro.
Hi, I'm also an intake technician with the CPRA, and I watch a lot of body cam footage, so happy to be here with you all. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And then we got Jay Wechter. Who is that?
Jason Wechter. I'm a complaint investigator 3 with the Community Police Review Agency.
Okay, all right. And I think that that's everybody who is on tonight. I want to thank you all for coming. Last week, we got an opportunity to go over to the police administration building where we had a demonstration of how body-worn cameras work and what can be seen. And that was very, very informative. Most everybody on here was at was at that lesson. I know that Reggie wasn't able to make it, but I think everybody else on was and Deputy Director Settle was not able to make it either. But I think everybody else attended. For those of you who attended, any thoughts, comments, or any questions or follow-up about anything before we get into the meat of our body-worn camera, or any questions about what we were actually able to see for those of you who were not able to attend? Okay, all right. No comments or anything. So why don't we go forward? I think that we've hopefully everybody's had a chance to take a look at the proposed policy. It's posted on the website, and I'm thinking that what we do is just sort of start going through it. Maybe just having Lieutenant Turner start walking us through it, and maybe Lieutenant Turner, give us an overview, just a quick summary of everything that's covered in the policy. Just a quick summary of everything, and then we'll start going through it provision by provision.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to share my screen here, and then kind of talk a little bit about policy, like you said, Madam Chair, and then go through it sort of section by section. So mainly what this policy is it is the requirement on the officers for the use of the body-worn camera and the associated technology with it. So basically, the way most body-worn camera systems work in policing today is that they are a what we call solid state units. So solid state means there's no components that are sort of whirring around or anything. I mean, you have to think about, when you see these old videos, from the 80s or 90s or something like that, that many times these patrol cars actually had like a VCR in the trunk, right? And a camera wired to that going all the way back. So you'd have tapes or discs, USB sticks, memory cards, etc. Most modern systems do away with all that because there's always opportunity. The more moving parts you have, the more parts in general, the more chances for failure and for possibly tampering or changing things, anything like that. So as technology has evolved, as we see in things like cell phones and all the rest of consumer technology, the same kind of technology is being used in these body-worn cameras. So it's the system really is two main components. It's the camera that you all saw, the actual object that you see mounted on the officer's chest. And that is the device that both records video and sound. And then it's the back end system. We use Axon products, so it's their product called evidence.com. And it takes all that digital evidence, the video file, which has audio on there, and it downloads it straight from the camera, goes into this program that has a lot of functionality around it. And those functionalities include things like the ability to view the camera footage, the ability to place tags on it, to mark it in certain ways, to say, okay, here's a point, to describe and add metadata to the file. So to say, this is the report number from this thing, this is the incident number, etc. And then also to audit, who is viewing those things, who has downloaded the file, and share it amongst not only those users who have access to our evidence.com instance, the Oakland Police Department, which includes members of the OPD, as well as certain oversight members like the CPRA. But then also we share these files with, say, other law enforcement agencies when we are required or allowed to do so. So for instance, with the district attorney's office, when they are doing discovery or things like that, we have to share body-worn camera footage because that is something that would be discoverable and is provided both to the prosecution and to the defense. And so you see this whole sort of environment that is created. And so the the policy, because this is a piece of surveillance technology as well, or at least under the current or the City of Oakland ordinance, this is considered a piece of surveillance technology. So the Oakland Privacy Advisory Committee, the PAC, which is also a public body that meets once a month, they also have some oversight over this in so far as this item, does capture people's likenesses, what they say when they are interacting with uniformed police officers. And so there is a little bit of give and take. This is an accountability tool. It is a tool that can improve performance. It can highlight exemplary performance. It can hold people accountable when they are not holding up to standards or when they engage in misconduct. But at the same time, it captures extremely private moments. Our police officers go into situations where people are injured, where people are having a bad day, where the domestic violence, sexual assault, all kinds of instances where it's sometimes the worst day of their life. And so understanding that, things of that nature, and there's this natural give and take. So that all having been said, this policy, what this one tries to do is satisfy a couple overarching goals. It provides the policy requirements for the officers and for our staff on how and when to use these body-worn cameras and how they can interact with the files once they've been created, things like sharing, viewing, using the evidence.com storage medium. And then it also it puts in these requirements that are required from the Privacy Advisory Committee. So things that govern every entity within the City of Oakland, but are typically focused on the police department. So as I kind of look forward and look through this, I'm going to zoom in a little bit because I know it's a little bit hard to see there. So as we look at this document, it starts out with talking a little bit about the intent and then goes directly into some general provisions. So someone around what the assignment of the body-worn cameras and requirements that they carry, some general things, specific prohibitions, things like. Oh yes, Chair.
I'm sorry. Let me interrupt. Do we want to try to do some editing now as we go along with as we go through, or how do I have a few? Some are just, they're not major, but I wonder if we should just start trying to do provision by provision or something. But what works best for other people on the call?
My thought of it is that if we should go through the entire document first, because I know that there may be things that people have lots of thoughts about certain areas, but maybe in particular sections as the sections go through, so that I assume that everyone has gone through it, but not necessarily, and not with the explanation of Lieutenant Turner, who gives us a lot of context for the policy and its various sections.
Okay, all right. Go ahead, Lieutenant Turner.
Yeah, absolutely. So some specific prohibitions that are general, things like dismantling or intentionally using the body-worn camera for recording personal conversations or places where there's an expectation of privacy, say restrooms, locker rooms, etc., within the police department. But then the real sort of, as we get to the specifics of the day-to-day and when we expect the officers to have their body-worn cameras on, we get to this first section B around the use of the body-worn camera. So where requirements, where we want the officers to place it, when they need to wear it, function checks, battery maintenance, some of the modes that we talked about for field use and when those are appropriate for use. This one is one that is paid attention to a lot. When the officers are required to activate the camera when they are in the field, when they are allowed to deactivate or when they shall deactivate the camera. There are very few instances, but some where they are required to deactivate. The one I can think of off the top of my head is for sexual assault victims, where confidentiality sort of overrides the need to record. When activation is not required. And then some statements or some direction to the officer on recording statements and then documenting the use. And then we go to how the officers are required to upload the data from the device. It's just like a cell phone, it can fill up. If you are using your cell phone to record a lot of videos or things like that, it will fill up. You need to plug it into a computer to download all the documents. Same thing with these. Annotation and categorization. I know this is on the back end, much easier for people to find these videos if they're properly annotated and categorized. That also means it stays within our rubric that surrounds the retention schedule. And then discretionary activation and deactivation, absent those that when the members are allowed to use their body-worn camera in situations if they're not required to activate, though the activation requirements are pretty strict. Then there's a section on viewing. So we go from use and then talk about viewing. So we do try with these policies to think of it from the perspective of a member or an officer who's relatively new. So I try to give them a pretty clear breakdown of what it is that they're expected to do. So that way I know that they can understand that, and then we can hold them accountable to it on the back end. So reviewing of their own files, when they are prohibited from reviewing their own files, and there are certain instances, especially with serious uses of force or allegations of misconduct or criminal conduct, where they're not allowed to review that. The requirements and duties of supervisors and commanders and their ability to review these files, that criminal investigation divisions, our investigators, are allowed to review many other files other than their own because they're investigating crimes where other officers have gone to the scene. That we can use these files for training. There is a separate section D around accountability and internal investigation reviews. And this really sets forth the specific things that in considerations, for instance, for supervisors and commanders and what they are looking for when they review these body-worn cameras. So it's not just something where you say, well, I looked at it or I reviewed it. What are you looking for? Things like that. What happens if they note misconduct or something like that? That we do have a random accountability review that requires supervisors to watch body-worn cameras of their subordinates, that we have specified incident review. So for specific incidents, they're required. Also for force investigations, if supervisors are doing investigations of these type of force, they need to watch the video. If they are investigating a vehicle pursuit, they will need to watch the video. If they are conducting an investigation into misconduct, they need to review the video. If they're conducting an investigation into a level 1 force incident, which is typically where an officer shoots at someone where there's a death or serious bodily injury and some other use of force, there is a review of the video. And then just other command and auditing reviews. So a provision to sort of allow other reviews for accountability outside of those required ones. We talk, and this sort of starts diving into the privacy realm, but around copying of the body-worn camera files. Understood that this is digital evidence, and so it is not something that can just be shared with anyone. So giving the sort of line staff direction on when they can copy and share these for any court proceedings, if they are called into court or subpoenaed, something like that. Public records requests, which are another common way that these videos are shared. Other copies, sometimes we do have investigators, and I know the CPRA investigator is probably similar, where you take some of the files home, you watch the videos, on in a little more leisurely manner on a larger case, something like that. Some strict prohibitions around copies and sharing, including posting on social media or something like that. Deletion, this is another one where we do have, as a piece of evidence, we have to have some pretty strict rules. There's removal requests. There is a data retention. This is a 2-year retention. This is one that the Privacy Advisory Committee had a very large role in setting this. Then these access and deletion logs, which are kept permanently. So even if the piece of evidence is deleted, the audit log showing who deleted it and why, or if it was deleted on a retention schedule, is retained. And then administrative information. This is mainly to comply with and to guide the department's response to the privacy ordinance. So you see things like here, the project administrator, which is me, and then some system administrators. So those who train, assist me in administering the system and their duties and roles. Then the training and that is required to be provided to anyone before they use a body-worn camera. A description of the technology, that's actually something required by ordinance. and description of the technology for the file management system also required by ordinance. So that is essentially the policy. As I mentioned, the ones directing the officers are typically the ones that people have the most questions about, because that is sort of where the proverbial rubber hits the road. But yeah, we can, Madam Chair, we can go section by section. We can just sort of ask questions at your pleasure. Yeah, that is the.
Well, yeah. Why don't we see if there are any questions about the policy overall, any questions in general, and then we'll start going through section by section. Anyone have any thoughts, comments, questions?
Yeah, I just had some, but these are some basic questions. I think I asked two this last week, but maybe I didn't. This is not a new policy, right? This is old. We're just updating this.
Yes, so this one that you see in front of you, this is a new draft. We do have a current policy, yes. So that is on our police department website. I believe on the commission's website as well. You see the previous policy, the one that we're currently living under. So this is a pretty large change, and mainly formatting. I try and change pretty much every policy that we have the old one because I don't like the old formatting. But yes, this is a new draft of a currently existing policy.
So technically it's revising an existing policy, revising and updating an existing policy.
Yes.
Okay, and Lieutenant Armstrong, you wrote this policy?
So I did write the majority of this policy. Yeah. So it depends on a lot of things, but most of these policies, yeah, I will draft the first one. Much of it does come you'll see very similar language to our current policy. As you know, that a lot of times the easiest way is if there is current language and it still works, to stay with that, because it avoids a lot of issues when we're talking about meet and confer or explaining changes to staff who have become used to certain language. But then in other places where there needs to be change, for instance, we did change a fair amount of the technology, and that required a lot of changes in this policy.
Okay, and then the last one on this is, damn it, it went out my head that fast. Oh, I got it back. I think I asked this too at the thing, but maybe not. This policy is reviewed every 2 years, or how often is this?
Well, it depends. So in older policies, one of the things it said was there was a requirement that they be reviewed every certain amount of time, and that wasn't happening. And so we don't have a specific review requirement. One of the things about the police commission and the charter amendment that changed it is that the police commission at any time can ask us to review or suggest changes, or even propose a new policy.
All right, that's it for right now.
Okay, all right, and that was Lieutenant Turner who drafted the policy.
Yes, the chief and I have the same birthday, but we are not related.
You're the chief. Okay, all right. Anybody else? Thank you, Katie. Those are good questions. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm sure I'm going to have more questions.
Oh, yes.
But quickly, when you were going through this, well, I thought you did a fantastic job. You mentioned level 1 Could you go back to that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's a couple places where this mentions level 1.
Yeah. And so I'll just state my pet peeve. These policies are often written by police officers because they think it's provincial, it's just for them. But this is a public document. This document is for the citizens of Oakland equally. So I don't know what level 1 is. That's police inside nomenclature. So when we write these policies, we ought to stay away from that. We ought to write this for Mrs. Johnson, who lives on 56th Street, so she can understand it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the idea of using these provincial, like you said, terms is definitely, I think one that we try and get away with as much as possible, or away from as much as possible. On the other hand, One of the things that is tough is that we do have this force investigation scheme that was set up. And when I say scheme, it's a foundation, not a plot. A foundation that is set up in our force investigation that was created through the negotiated settlement agreement. And so it has these different levels of force that we have to adhere to. And so one of the things I think where there's areas where we can't get away from using things like level 1, because this does encompass a lot of things, and it might encompass some things that we don't cover. So for instance, if we said officer involved shooting investigation review, well, what if an officer, for instance, uses their car to intentionally hit someone? That would be a level 1 use of force. So they push someone off a roof and the person dies. That would be a level 1, but it might not be where the officer shoots. So we try and sort of encompass all these situations where something might happen in the unexpected. So I think what we try and do is, as much as possible, link back to other things. So for instance, this might be a place where we could link to the level 1 investigation protocol that is a public document. So then that way, the members of the public who are interested in say, oh, well, I'm not sure what this means, that they click on the link and then it goes to the next public document that explains sort of what these things are and how this is investigated. Do you think that might be helpful?
Oh yeah, I think that will help immensely. But what also could help is that after you make a level 1, you write something, some definition, either parenthetically or annotated down, at the end of the policy. Just indicate with the star and have them go down to the bottom of the policy, level 1 means, and give a definition.
Yeah, I definitely.
In other words, include footnotes because police talk in shorthand and we talk in our own nomenclature, and then the average person doesn't understand it. It's not that we do that on purpose, but sometimes we do.
Right, understood.
Great. So we'll consider, and Jesse, I'll come to you in a few minutes. So we'll consider parenthetical if it's something short. Maybe you can do an example, or you will, or you can do a link to. I mean, if there's a really long policy or something, you can do a link to that. Okay, so that's what we'll consider.
Or a footnote. You can footnote
or footnotes. Yeah, that's true. Or footnotes. Commissioner Shea.
So question, I know that Lieutenant Turner mentioned that part of this policy will be governed by the privacy ordinance. What sections are those, and what sections do we need to pay attention to that we are constrained by things other than our discussions and policy?
Great question. So like I mentioned, a lot of the sections, especially around where we start getting into like section E, F, and G, are really ones where it is directly responsive to the privacy ordinance. So now just to keep in mind, and this is not advice, but the Privacy Advisory Committee is based on a municipal code section, I believe 9.65 of the Oakland Municipal Code, and it is an advisory committee, whereas the Police Commission is a charter commission. So there are differences. I'm not going to say which one is hierarchically sort of has precedence, but the difference between the charter and an ordinance, I believe, is relatively significant. On the other hand, the Privacy Advisory Committee does provide advice to the City Council on these type of things, on anything where surveillance equipment is used, and the body-worn camera does count as surveillance equipment. So things I know that the Privacy Advisory Committee is very interested in are things like retention, things like data sharing, things like ensuring the security of the data. Those are areas where the Privacy Advisory Committee has their bailiwick, and I believe will carry a lot of sway because that is the thing that they are very interested in. As citizens of Oakland, I think they're interested in the entirety of the policy. But in terms of police practices and things, that's more of the domain of the Police Commission, I would argue.
Okay.
I didn't see any indication of any disciplinary action in here. What happens if somebody turns the camera off and they shouldn't?
Right.
Did that be in the policy?
So that there's the opportunity to say that there could be discipline. There is also a discipline matrix and a discipline policy. So one of the things around the NSA is that we do have a pretty significant discipline structure that surrounds a lot of things. So when we look at specific violations of policies, a lot of times there are specific disciplines. So for instance, this one, our discipline matrix is a public document. And this one there is a specific discipline for failure to activate or deactivating inappropriately the body worn camera.
And where's that information located?
So that information is on our website. It's on our public documents page. That actually is in my email signature. I'm not sure if you've received an email from me, but the OPD publications page is actually where it's at. Now we have the training bulletins, the policies, et cetera, and the OPD discipline policy is one of those, as well as the discipline matrix.
So is it Oakland Police Department's position that once it's in the discipline matrix, it should not be duplicated in this policy?
It is our position that typically we try to avoid duplicative items for the reason being is that if we change, let's say that the Department Police Commission decide, well, you know what, we're going to change the discipline matrix. Then if something else is somewhere else and we've duplicated it in multiple other places, there's a possibility we miss it somewhere. And that causes a incongruence, and that's problematic. So we try to reference to as opposed to duplicating.
I actually was thinking that earlier, so I'm glad someone else asked. So the disciplinary matrix it's a standalone policy that, whatever violations you violate, somebody's going to refer you to the disciplinary policy, and then there's going to be like a section on the body worn camera. There's a section on whatever else folks is out here doing.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I'm going to share my screen and actually show the discipline matrix. If you can see it here, I know it's a little small, so I'm actually on the public website here.
Realizing that we don't have a chat function, otherwise I would have.
Yeah, I was trying to talk about the chat function. I couldn't find it. So I had to switch gears there a little bit. But
Lieutenant Turner, if I can just interject briefly, you might also want to bring up the manual of rules, which outlines, every possible violation that someone can commit, because the discipline matrix does also refer to manual of rules violations. So that may help provide some clarity as well.
Right. Yeah, so absolutely, like Director Suttle was saying, the manual of rules, which is also available on our website, is sort of the set of laws that governs the police department. And so many times when officers are accused of not following a certain policy, there are things in the manual of rules that say specifically what they should or should not have done. And so, for instance, then when we go to the discipline matrix, then so if they're say, well, Lieutenant Turner has been found to have violated this manual of rules, right, that he failed to activate his personal digital recording device, which is what we used to call the body worn camera. So it's right here. For his first offense, he would get a discipline within the range of written reprimand to a 5-day suspension. And then that increases, progressive discipline increases, so that the second time it would be somewhere between a 2-day to a 10-day suspension. And then the third time a 10-day to a 30-day suspension. And those depend on circumstances and the specific, any aggravating or mitigating factors. But that is, for instance, the discipline for this particular thing. And you can see it ranges for different violations.
Great. And I see that Pastor Thompson has Dr. Thompson has joined us as well. She's still there? Oh, did we lose her? Uh-oh. Oh, there she is. Okay. Okay. All right. Welcome, Pastor Jackie. Oh, she's connecting to audio. Go ahead, man. Any other questions along that? Good evening. Good evening.
It seems to me that you can turn your camera off 3 or 4 times and still keep a job.
That's a possibility. Now, it's going to depend on the circumstances. I mean, if we are talking about someone who is intentionally, committing misconduct, then there's probably going to be other things that are involved there. But yeah, progressive discipline does mean that the discipline will be progressive.
Well, I'm going to state this, my opinion. You shouldn't get 3 bites at the apple turning your camera off, and I don't know that you should even get 5 days, maximum 3 days, and that's the ceiling. And you do it again, you terminate it. I don't get this. We have to change this. You want officers going around turning their cameras off, and the maximum they get is 30 days. That's ridiculous.
Right. So, well, what I would say is that this is again, that this is not around, this encompasses everything from misconduct that is people failing to do something or omitting, all the way up to people who are engaged in deliberate misconduct to cover other misconduct or engage in criminal acts. So it really does have to cover that gamut. And I'm sure Deputy Chief, is in your time that you had people who made mistakes of the head and not of the heart, and that those people made mistakes, and that the first thing action wasn't to just terminate them. I wouldn't. But
I'm not surely not saying that. I'm just thinking in this particular policy, the reason why when they asked me to come on here, I said, yeah, I want to participate in this. This is the linchpin for justice, street justice, in America. This body-worn camera, this policy we're working on right now is the most valuable piece of policy in law enforcement if we're going to get accountability. So if officers can have up to 30 days and 3 or 4 times to turn their camera off, no matter the severity of the issue, they ought not be police officers.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to argue with you. I'll just stop right there.
Absolutely. Agree to disagree. Yeah. Yes.
So I think that in connection with this, it certainly would be appropriate for us to maybe suggest that there is a special discipline, progressive discipline scheme for turning off the cameras, for deactivating the cameras, and maybe we look at that. This is critical. I agree with Reggie that this is very critical, and this is what the public is very concerned about. And things may happen where there's an inadvertent camera getting turned off or something, or a failure to turn it on or inadvertently, but I agree. We gotta consider the message needs to be that this is not going to be tolerated.
Okay. So I just want to provide a little context, and then I see there are some hands up. But just so for historical context, and this is one that I think the members of the monitoring team would tell you as well, that when we first got these cameras, there was a problem with police officers refusing or failing or whatever you want to call it to turn it on. The union and the police department together went to almost every lineup talked to almost every police officer, and used the words, and I quote, soul-crushing discipline, to tell the officers that if they did not turn their cameras on, that was what was going to happen. That is a direct quote from at the time a deputy chief and the union, that they agreed on this word, soul-crushing discipline. It worked. There is, for now, I think what we see is almost negligible instances of officers who are refusing to turn on their cameras or not turn on their cameras. So we have seen a huge change in this. I know this is an issue in other police departments, and I've seen it in these other instances. And so I do just want to provide some context that there was this issue. There was specific discipline. That is why you see that specific carve out for the body worn camera in particular in the discipline policy.
Okay, and we're going to go with Deputy Director Suttle. Then I will go to Frida Caro, and then I'll go to Dixon. Okay, Katie. All right, Deputy Director Suttle, go ahead. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. I think it's important for us to recognize that Lieutenant Turner did reference aggravating and mitigating circumstances that are used to determine the discipline range. And also, if an officer were to intentionally not turn on his camera or his or her camera, or intentionally turn their camera off, then there would likely be another manual of rules violation associated with that. That would also have to be taken into consideration in what the discipline range is for that particular violation. So I think if you review the manual of rules and you review the discipline matrix in its entirety, you'll see that, you know, any violation that you can think of has been captured in those documents. And again, if it's determined that, you know, an officer intentionally did this, then again, those would be aggravating circumstances that would enhance the discipline. And there would likely also be other violations associated with that would have to be taken into consideration.
Okay. All right, thank you, Deputy Director. And we'll go to Frida Caro.
Hi, thank you. So I agree with what prior DC Lyles was saying. I think one of the bigger concerns is officers failing to turn on their camera. As I'm familiar with the policy, there's some gray areas as to when officers need to turn on the cameras to dispel the suspicion of a crime. Can be discretionary, can be kind of subjective. So to have that be more specific, I think would be helpful. And to memorialize such language about discipline, that conversation that happened during lineups is something that should be written down. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, and then Katie Dixon.
Yeah, I agree that, you know, this is definitely one of the leading tools when it comes to justice and holding folks accountable. And, you know, with the amount of money we spending on this technology, so that our officers can have some of the best technology, you know, I think it should be a little bit more steep penalties for the purpose turn off, a accidental turn off, because you can't really accidentally turn them off. So I just wanted to say, I think I agree with that, because yeah, we spend a lot of money and resources, and you know, the community already upset about more money going to the police department and stuff like that. So if we're going to be justifying spending the money on this stuff, I think maybe it is time to review the disciplinary ladder.
Okay, I'll go to Reggie. Let me just clarify though. Deputy Director Suttle, your hand is still up. Was that a new hand that went up before?
No, ma'am. I will lower my hand right now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, Reggie, we'll go to you.
Yeah, you know, while I thoroughly appreciate the intentionality and the direction where Oakland Police Department is going on issues like this, don't get me wrong, I applaud it. I love police officers. I want them to be moral police officers. But I don't understand the phrase soul-crushing discipline. I don't know what that means. That's not a legal term. That ain't nothing I could take to court. What is soul crushing discipline? I've never been trained on soul crushing discipline. I know this, that if you behave in a certain way, we have a range of discipline that fits that behavior. And that's what it is, precisely. You get 1 day off, you get 2 days off, up to and including termination. That's what I was waiting to hear from you. And I haven't heard that word. And I don't know why that's not in this policy. The one policy that was fought against tooth and nail by the union against having it, took us years to get it. Then when we get it, we're supposed to hang our hat on soul crushing discipline. I don't know what that means. No, man, this is what I want to hear. I want the officers to know that if you turn that camera off, or if a sergeant's not reviewing his complement of officers and their camera work, if they're negligent in any kind of way, there's some discipline that goes with that. And the only discipline that I know that police officers recognize is when you lose days off or may lose your job. That's what make them respond. And if you're right, and I trust you, Lieutenant Turner, trust you 100%. If we have a great pendulum swing to more appropriate behavior, then what I'm asking for wouldn't be a big thing. We already, who cares if it's 1 day or 2 days of termination? We are already abiding by it. So, soul crushing discipline does nothing for me. It sounds good. It sounds good, but if I had a lawyer, you can't do nothing to me. You crushed my soul. I'm still working. I'm still working, and I'm still doing the same thing over and over and over, 2 or 3 times. And I'm influencing other younger officers by my behavior. If we're gonna change this, this is the bridge here. This is the policy. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Reggie. Commissioner Shea?
I think I got 2 things. One is that I think that if what we're looking for, especially if we're even thinking about increasing discipline or the amount or the potential discipline, is to make sure that we have clear guidance for officers so that they know and that the rules are very clear. And I think that we have an opportunity to do that. I know that when speaking with some of the officers who gave the demonstration 2 Tuesdays ago, one of the questions that came up, there was a difference of opinion about sort of how they treated the body-worn camera, what they felt was most important to them, and what was, what was important. So for one mentioned that it was their insurance against a interaction that they wouldn't know which way it would go. For another, it was the way that it would stifle honest conversation. For another, it's sort of the confusion about when to turn these on and when to not have them. I think the when to not have them is probably more clear. I do think if we are thinking about more serious discipline, it is imperative that we make the rules very, very clear, such that officers know where those lines are, and so that they cannot, there's no question about when they cross those lines. The second question I have is the discipline matrix only offense for 3. Of course, we don't want to think about it, right? But what happens on offense 4 through 6? Can someone from the department say?
Yeah, I think that once we get to 4 through 6, because that's past a 30-day, that at that point the department would start looking towards termination. Typically for something like that, with a range in that frame, the fourth violation is where you're going to start looking at termination, depending on the circumstances.
Is there a time limit or like drop-off period? Say 15 years from now, someone has their 3rd violation. And their first year in the first year or something.
5 years. Yeah, 5. Yeah.
May I ask another question, Commissioner Harbin?
Certainly, go ahead.
Yeah. Is there any other policies around discipline where in the Oakland language that they use, that it includes up to and including termination?
Yes.
Okay, I knew that. And so it's shocking to me that it's not here. It's just like indefensible. And I get it. I get it, 95% of the officers that would be under this policy will abide by it. But that's not who the policy is for. You know who the policy is for, and you've been around long enough to have seen them, met them, worked with them. Those people come in to law enforcement and they're not, just the one bad apple. Something ain't right about them. And they do things and it embarrasses all of us. So to act like they don't exist or act like we can't say, no, we're gonna fire you if you do this. We don't want you with us. If we act like we can't say that, then we don't understand community policing. We don't understand what the people want from us. And I know I've been out of the business a long time, but listen, I'm going to my grave thinking like this. If you can't fire a guy that you know shouldn't be in the police department, then you shouldn't be in management. That's your sole job. The people who don't need you is the guy who reads this one time and does everything correct because it's the moral thing to do. That's not the guy we're here to manage. The guy we're here to manage is the guy who or female who will not abide by the rules or always cutting corners or always trying to do something nefarious. And so that's who we're here to manage. And I think the policy should be directed to that behavior. So Judge Harbin, I'd be ashamed to take this to the public.
That's okay.
I'd be ashamed to take this to the public and the public say, well, wait a minute. We in Oakland have fought for 30 years for this. The policy wasn't even up. The technology wasn't even available. But this is exactly what we want. We want to show me that you are accountable. Don't just tell me, show me. We got officers doing things and then lying on reports and then getting caught lying on reports, getting terminated and then finding to get the job back. So
go ahead. I don't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'm talking to the other people on this commission now. This is the Waterloo right here. This is it. If we can't get this right, we're just joking around here.
Okay, and I think we have a couple of options that I'll talk about. And let me go to KD first, and then we can talk about some options we have.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I agree, and I really appreciate the discussion that's going on and starting to get into the weeds and a call for just a call for more seriousness when it comes to being direct about who we're talking about and things like that. So I really appreciate Mr. Lyles for, stepping in and raising some of these concerns because like I said, yeah, we didn't spend a lot of money on this equipment. We want the equipment. We need the equipment really. And so I think so. I think we need to talk to, whoever is in charge of reviewing maybe some of the disciplinary actions. And I think it's time to take those a little more serious because Yeah, I mean, this is the last stance when it comes to somebody lying on me, and now I gotta be going all to jail and shit, trying to prove my innocence and all this and that, and you didn't lie on a report, and people do go down for a long time like that. I've been to jail off a lying police report, you know, and so I think these cameras are the last stand, you know, for accountability, you know, out here. The cell phones introduced, you know, video recordings and stuff as last stands. And now that we have got this stuff for the officers, I think so. I think the disciplinary need to be reviewed to be a little bit more serious. And again, I think the language too, as he suggested, need to be a little bit more intentional, because again, good officers don't have accidents with the thing being turned on and off. So I agree.
Let me say, I know that in some of our policies, maybe it was the anti-discrimination policy, maybe another, we have said in the policy itself, and then maybe in community policing, others, that basically there are some consequences to not following the policy. And I think that we ought to put in the first paragraph, the first two paragraphs someplace, when we talk about the intent of this policy, etc., to give the warning there that violation of the policy, we have to get the discipline matrix change, but that if it's changed, that violation of the policy could result in termination or something like that. And so that we say in the policy itself, this is serious, and we expect full compliance. And if you don't, you could lose your job. I think that people would appreciate that when they read it in there. But again, I don't know what, and the other question I was going to raise was, what does it take to change the discipline policy, the discipline matrix, so that termination is one of the options? Because as Reggie pointed out, or someone else did, right now it's kind of like, okay, there's your third strike, and your third strike is a max of 30 days. Why isn't up to and including termination, at least for the third strike, if not before then? And what would we need to do? Does this ad hoc committee have any control or input in that? Is that an internal thing? Is it going to have to go to the union, and there's going to be meeting, conferring, negotiations, and all of that stuff? What would be the process?
So this is Deputy Director Settle.
Okay.
In order to be able to change the discipline matrix, that requires input from various stakeholders. And so we hear your concerns. We don't necessarily disagree with you, but I think Lieutenant Turner and I can go back and meet with internal stakeholders within the department, let them know what your concerns are, and then draft some language that we can present to you that may be able to, meet the needs of everyone, all of our stakeholders here on the department today. But I do think that your concerns are addressed in our manual of rules and in the discipline matrix, because as I stated before, if someone were to do some of the things that you guys have brought up on this phone today, it would not just be isolated to one manual of rules violation. It would be more. But I think, we definitely hear your concerns, and Lieutenant Turner and I can go back and meet and, provide additional language that we can present to you.
Okay. And then whatever the strictest is, and maybe we can put in the policy that, that violation of this, if coupled with other manuals of rules violations, could result in termination. Maybe we put that reminder out there, so that even now, even though right now it's just solely violating this policy, won't lead to termination. If there are other rules of manuals violations, it could be termination. So I think we could phrase the language that says, if there's something else you're doing other than not following the BWC policy, you could lose your job. And you need to know that, and the public needs to know that. Let me go to KD and then go to Commissioner Shea. And then to Reggie.
This an old hand raised. Let me put that down.
Old one. Okay, Commissioner Shea, and then we'll go to Reggie Lyles.
Did find the section about fourth violations may result in termination, probably a footnote to drop in from this discipline policy, or just including it into the matrix in general also. But I don't know how that's going to do. We'll figure it out.
Okay, all right. Go to Reggie and then we'll go to.
Yeah,
Pastor
I know I've been clear. I just want to reiterate it again. Officer involved shootings, wrong. Officer involved shootings where life is lost, sexual assaults, use of drugs, while on duty, etc., and turning off your video camera. They're in the same category. Of course, the officer involved shooting where life is lost is more severe, but they're in the top tier. Those are the issues that every officer ought to know. Listen, this is when we're gonna go to bat and try to get you away from us and get you away from our organization. And so I'm not even, I know that the union probably wouldn't agree, but that's so immaterial, it's unbelievable. Who cares? What we're fighting for is across this nation, and including Oakland Police Department, we've had incidences where they've turned off cameras. Not all of the officers, just a few. And that's who we have to focus on, the few. So it's got to be an anathema. We are not going to do this. We don't sexually assault people. We don't use drugs or alcohol while on duty. We don't randomly shoot at people or into houses. We don't. Those are the kind of, and we don't turn off our cameras, and we don't lie on police reports. Those are supposed to be the anathemas of law enforcement. And that shouldn't even be 10% of the force. That should be 2 or 3% that we're concerned about. But it has to be stated. If it's not stated, it's all fungible. It's going to be soul crushing.
I know that excuse me, I know that Pastor Jackie had her hand up. I want to hear from her. And then Commissioner Shea, for some reason, I clicked something so that my screen is black. So I can't see anything. So Commissioner Shea, if you would call on the speakers, I'd appreciate it. I'm going to try to get, can you all see me? I can't see anybody. Can you see me?
We can see you.
Huh? Can you hear me?
We can see you. We can hear you.
Really? Okay. But okay, Jessica, can you just go ahead and call on people who have their hands up? Let's hear from Pastor Jackie. And then if anybody else raises their hands.
Can you all hear me?
We can, yes, we hear you.
Okay, let me first apologize. I'm literally just landing and walking through SFO, but I want to first echo everything that Deacon Reggie Lyles said. And then second, I want to lift up if the purpose, just to link it to the community policing concept, if the purpose of community policing, one of the tenets is to build trust between the police department and the community, then this seems like a moot discussion.
Yep.
Because this is one of the major components that is an area of distrust between the police department and the community. So I want to echo everything that he said. I also want to echo what Commissioner Hayes said in terms of making sure that officers are clear on what the policy, the purpose of it is. What is the purpose of the camera and its use? And then I know that I am behind, so I keep hearing, Deacon Lyles, maybe you can explain it to me, a reference to the third strike of the third time. And the reason why I want to get clarity is because that is troubling to me. The idea that you would even have 3 times is a challenge for me. So if someone could lift that up, if not now, at a later date, and I'll review all the materials. But I do think we can't lose sight of the fact that the goal is everything you all have stated, but also to take action that rebuilds trust in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor. Jesse, anybody else? Jesse, can you go ahead and share the meeting, the rest of the meeting?
Yeah, I got it. I don't see anybody else. We're at, let's see, perhaps we could talk about specific sections or Reggie, I think I see your hand is up. I also see you talking. I also see that you're muted. I think I muted you. There it is.
Okay, you don't have to do that. I'm on my way. I have to go. We have a little emergency here. So sorry about it. I'm gonna have to sign off.
Thanks, Reggie. Our meetings are every other Tuesdays. And
I'll be
we'll
here.
make everybody, all right, thank you all.
Bye-bye.
So we can go through each section and make some notes on it. Should we start that now? Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why would we do that? Yeah, I'm happy to hear anyone's suggestions or comments. And especially, I would like to, if we're talking about, making things very clear for our folks, because I have to lead every officer in this police department. I don't just spend my time managing people who are bad. I lead every one of them. So that's, I expect them to hold them to a high standard, and I want to set the correct standard for them. So yeah, suggestions there would be appreciated.
Okay. All right, that's great. And what I'm going to try to do is see if I can log on from another computer where I can see people, at least if I can't see everything, and I can see your screen. Are you going to do some screen sharing?
Oh yeah, yes, Chair. Yeah, I will. Happy to write some comments if there's specific language, or I'll just write some comments. I know I do have a comment there. I'm not sure. I know you can't see the screen there, Chair, but I did note in that first section to, like we did with the use of force policy, add some sentences here in regards to possible consequences. I do want to note that the discipline matrix is a range, but it does not mean that the department cannot go outside that range for egregious cases, things like that. So it is something like that. So it can say up to and including termination, because that is a possibility for egregious cases. So that's one of the comments I've written in there. Yep, I'm happy to make changes if there's specific language, or write in some comments for a sort of rubric to myself or anyone else on suggesting language as we kind of move through.
Okay, and we go back up to the paragraph that says the intent of this policy.
Yeah.
So we make a note, add sentences regarding consequences. Okay, consequences. Okay, okay, that's great. And then in A1, it's just really a type, not so much a typo, but I think it's custodian of records with an S on it.
Oh, okay.
Right, Jesse? The custodian of records.
You got more than one, or you anticipate having more than one.
Yes. So there's that little one. And then the next down in A2, 3.
Okay.
Did you get rid of my favorite thing? Let's see. Hardware or software. How about hardware or software? Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. The next one I have is over on B1. Okay. By the way, does anybody else have anything in A? Okay. So B1, I have on the where requirements, the suggestion that we spell out CID and OIA, so that we spell out the acronyms there.
I'm just going to make a note for everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same, yeah, same for OIA. Okay. That is, let's see, that is it. The next one for me was over on.
Before we go on to the next section, so about B1, this is about BWC in uniformed assignments, aren't there non-uniformed assignments?
Yes. So the main one is criminal investigations, though my assignment, for instance, is a non-uniformed one. I normally wear my uniform because it's easier and I save on dry cleaning, but I could easily wear a suit and tie. So those are ones where we non-uniform. Yeah.
Okay. Is there any, I have to think about it, but I'm thinking about situations where non-uniformed personnel go out and do things in the field, right? That may have implications or may require, or we may want body-worn cameras to be worn or activated. That may come in the later sections, actually. So, yeah,
Okay.
I'm good. Rita, Carol?
Yeah, is there any, do undercover officers ever wear body cams? And is that a possibility that we could put in the policy?
Right. Typically, they do not, mainly because it kind of outs you as a police officer when you have a body-worn camera on you. So no, most of the time they don't. Now, the way that we, at least Oakland, in contrast to San Francisco, we do not have like plainclothes enforcement squads or people who go out and say, will then present themselves as the police wearing plain clothes. So when we have, I don't talk too much about that, mainly because I don't know, but our undercover capacity officers are typically going to observe and report and then have uniformed officers take law enforcement action, or if they do need to take law enforcement action, they put on something that identifies themselves as police. This is typically, at least in our agency, the result of a tragic circumstance where an undercover officer was killed by uniformed officers. And so that institutional history is one of the reasons why we don't have plainclothes units like San Francisco.
All right. Okay, now I can see everybody through my other computer screen. Okay. Okay, anything else then before we move over to the next page? I have a comment or suggestion on page on B5, the end of B5, but it's something that you'll correct anyway. It was to spell out PAB.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So the section above B4, once you're done with that note.
Yeah,
I'm done. Yeah.
Okay, just thinking about the implications of B4. If a member finds out that at the beginning of their shift, their body-worn camera did not charge, what are their options? Do they sit there with it charging, or do they get a temporary one, or do they not go on shift?
Right, good question. So it is going to be typically that they will get assigned another one. Like, let's say, so what this section is designed to do, right? And again, vestige from previous times, when we had this older technology that you had to plug it in to an outlet in like your locker every day after your shift. And so a common excuse for those people who were causing trouble, right? Those people who Chief Lyle said should not be here was like, oh, it's not charged, right? Well, now these, as you saw, right, what we do is the officers actually dock the camera into a dock, which is maintained by the police department. So if the power has gone out at the police department, we've got larger problems than just people's cameras are not plugged in. If it should happen, though, that I plug mine into my computer or something like that, there's some local power outage, whatever. We do have a bank of extra cameras that the supervisors, the sergeants, can assign to that person. So we do not have an instance where the person will say, well, I don't have a camera today, so I'm just going to go out without them. Also, we don't have an instance where they say, well, I don't have a camera today, so I guess I just have to stay inside. We do have enough equipment to ensure that people can get what they need.
I assume that there are sign out or documentation procedures for when someone is using a temporary body-worn camera.
So it has to be assigned by one of the administrators. So supervisors have that ability. They have to assign it. It actually audits and puts in the log of that camera who it's been assigned to or things like that. Should someone, say, for instance, grab a camera in exigent circumstance, use it, and then say, I need this assigned to me because I used it, I ran out the door, grabbed this one on the way of this critical incident, we can still assign those videos back to that person and things like that.
So do you think you should put in B4, spell it out, if the battery is not fully charged, that they get another one?
Well, we do say that, for B3, that the function check, I think we could probably put this into and combine these two, function check and power on and battery maintenance, right? Because during the function check, checking the battery, this is probably an area where these two could be combined, because then when we say, oh, if it's not functional, breaks, or is not charged for for a reason, that is out of that member's control, then they should get a new camera.
Okay.
And we are capturing or sort of doing also making sure these are charged on the back end by requiring officers to upload their cameras or video contents at the end of every shift, which is also the charging dock.
It's convenient in that fashion, but the upload requirement is for more than just making sure they charge. It's also to get the videos out, but it helps.
Okay. How about okay, anything else then in B? The B5 there, or anything else in B6? I don't have anything in B6. My next one is in B7.
So I think B6 is going to be B6, B7, and potentially B8, and some portions of C are probably where I think some good amount of discussion would be. I think B6 is a question of policy-wise, when do we want these cameras on?
Yes.
At the moment, we have what seems like a pretty significant focus on these cameras must be on whenever a department member is interacting with a person who is potentially a detainee, an arrestee, or a suspect, right? Those are definitely situations where probably following a good amount of litigation, right? You want a body-worn camera on.
Use of the coercive police powers, yes.
Right. I wonder if there are other situations where people have opinions on when a body-worn camera should absolutely be on. For instance, I know this is later, there's a later section about this. I know that there are opinions about whether or not they should be on for every single witness statement. Part of that is, I think about it, when I don't have a recorded statement, the officer's credibility becomes at issue, right? And well, don't know if we necessarily want that. When there are interactions with the public, do we want those to always be recorded? When there are, and I'm sure there are many other situations that may come when there's any sort of pursuit, although this kind of gets into like suspect or detainee and arrest. Anybody have thoughts? Frida Cara.
Yeah, I think anytime that an officer elects to approach a community member for whatever reason, they should be turning on their cameras. I've seen complaints where officers were approaching community members to dispel the suspicion that they were committing a crime, but didn't turn their cameras on until they were in the interaction, not when they initially came upon the suspicion that there was a crime. So whenever they're interacting with the public, that would make sense to me. Thank you.
And so this says you should do it prior to participating, prior to contacting the person to confirm or dispel.
Yeah,
So, so it requires it, but CPRA has found cases where they did not,
right.
they were not doing it before they undertook to dispel.
And that's possibly a
Confirm
violation of policy. You know. So one thing is that, you know, I do want to recognize that, you know, and we can get jaded, or not jaded, I should say, but focused on some of these things, especially when, you know, like myself as an administrator, you see sort of nothing but sort of the negative consequences of some of these. But approaching community members is much more, or it should be much more, of our officers than just confirming or dispelling that they're a suspicion that they're involved in criminal activity. We do have, you know, officers engaged in a lot of activity, whether it is just, you know, speaking with people in the community, engaged in community outreach, canvassing for witnesses, or instances or surveillance video. All those things would count as approaching. You know, even if I were to knock on someone's door and ask, you know, if they happen to see anything about a robbery that occurred in front of their home, if they have surveillance cameras, that they would then be captured on these body-worn cameras. And so, you know, understand with a broad stroke like that, we would get, you know, some of these complaints might get resolved, or we might have video evidence to show whether or not the alleged behavior occurred. But on the other hand, then we do sort of take in a lot more information about interactions with people who are not under suspicion at all, and where the police officers are just interacting with them. And I know that, you know, we did hear from some of those officers about the possible chilling effect with, you know, when you are on camera. It's a little bit uncomfortable for both sides, and creating that kind of interaction in community policing sometimes can be difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it can be difficult.
Okay.
Katie Dixon.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I got a quick one. What about debriefs of like the situation? Like when office, you know, like after it's over and we got to sit down and debrief what happened, and are the cameras on then? Should they be on? Or are they not allowed? I don't know. What you think about that, Mr. Turner?
Yeah, that's a great question. Typically, they aren't. They are not turned on, and it's for a few reasons. The main one is that when we do debriefs, it's away from any person, member of the community. All right, so it is solely law enforcement, and we do want the ability for people to speak freely about if there was any issues or anything like that. And finally, we discuss a lot of times sensitive tactics. So about, you know, ways that things might have been done differently, tactical things like that, that are a safety concern if they are put on body-worn cameras and then released widely to the public. So that's one of the reasons, or those are some of the reasons why those sorts of debriefs are not included. That does not mean that much of that information might not be in a subsequent investigation, for instance, if there was a use of force or something like that.
Okay. Why don't we all kind of think about about this provision, whether or not we've covered everything. And so when we meet again, it's almost 7:30 now. When we meet, our next meeting will be on July 26th at 6. And we do go from 6 to 7:30. So why don't we have that? And let me just double check that I got all of my Tuesdays squared away.
Sorry, I thought we were going till 8. That's why I was like engaging in this long discussion. My bad. I was not.
No, that's okay. There's
Oh no, because I gotta hop off at 7:30. Y'all, I've been on the laptop all day.
There's 6 to 7:30 as our meeting time. So
okay. Well, that's good though, because it's better than an hour. At first, I thought it was gonna be an hour. That's kind of too short. 2 hours is kind of too long.
Yeah, so yeah, we cut it right there in the middle, 6 to 7:30. So here we go. Then we will meet again on July 26th, 6 o'clock. And again, one of the things we'll do is we'll finish up with this provision and see if there are any other examples that we need to specify. Anything for good of the order now before we do it? Pastor Jackie, thank you so much for being here and everything, and just really looking forward to working with you again. And Reggie, we did such a good job on the community policing thing, so I'm really glad to have your input on this one. So
Thank you. Honored to be here.
yes, and good. And Jesse and I, we've been partners in crime on a whole bunch of things. So anyway, but I'm really excited about the entire team here. This is really good. Continue to speak up and speak out. Give us your input. And we're all thick-skinned around here, and we don't take things personally. So, and poor Lieutenant Turner, he's used to us jumping on him.
Yes.
Okay, anything else? Any questions, anything else? If not, everybody have a wonderful evening.
Thanks to everybody. I really appreciate being on the team with y'all. Thanks, Brenda, for holding it down for us, and Jacqueline for, trooping in fresh off the plane, and everybody. And I appreciate the officers for, listening and being willing to, you know what I'm saying, take our stuff back to the appropriate people and stuff like that. So yeah, that's it. I just want to say that
we can make Oakland a much better city in which to live, and that's what we're doing. We'd love to just get rid of CPRA, but we are trying to make sure that CPRA is no longer needed in Oakland. And so that's what we want to do. But we do the best that we can, and we just try to do. But when everybody gets together who's committed to the same thing, even though we have different ideas sometimes about how to get there, if we're all committed to the same goal, good things are going to happen. So I'm just really pleased to work with everybody toward our goal. All right. Thank you all. See you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.